Thanks very much, Ibir. And now we'll turn the floor over to Juliette Touma, the Director of Communications for the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East. Juliette is speaking from Amman. Juliette, over to you.
Thank you, Farhan, and thank you, my friend and colleague Abir. It's good to see you, albeit a very bad and harsh circumstances we are all going through. Before I begin, Farhan, I would like to share the last message that we were able to get from the teams in Gaza. You may be aware that Gaza is now undergoing a fourth communications blackout, and as a result, there will not be a cross-border aid operation at the Rafah crossing tomorrow morning. The communications network in Gaza is down because there is no fuel, and this makes it impossible to manage or coordinate humanitarian aid convoys. This came through from our colleagues in Gaza. It has been almost 6 weeks of hell for the people of Gaza, 6 weeks since the abhorrent attack in Israel, 6 weeks of total disregard for international humanitarian law. Today, Gaza looks like it's been hit by an earthquake, except it's man-made and it could have been totally avoided. We have just witnessed in the past week the largest displacement of Palestinians since 1948. This was an exodus under our watch, a river of people being forced to flee their homes. Some were forced to relive the unlivable, traumas from the past, mostly unhealed. Others, the younger generation, were forced to live through traumas of ancestors or parents, while other communities are survivors of 1948 who were never displaced until November this year. This week, our teams reported people arriving after hours and hours of walking. They were dehydrated, hungry, exhausted, and shell-shocked. Many asked, what next? Where do I go now? Unlike in other global conflicts in recent years, the people of Gaza are trapped in an enclave with no way out. The enclave has now shrunk by half. Many continue to flock to UNRWA shelters, where we are hosting more than 800,000 people. The dignity of people has been stripped overnight. Let's just imagine what this means for a human being. Children in the shelters are pleading for a sip of water and a piece of bread. Some of these children used to study in the very same school that became their shelters. People are telling us they must queue for 2 to 3 hours just to go to the toilet. They share one toilet with hundreds of others. All of this brings us back to the medieval age. On the latest on the situation on the ground and a chance to address some misinformation, we reiterate at UNRWA that nowhere and no place is safe in the Gaza Strip. Not the north, not the south, and not the middle areas. Of my colleagues who were killed, 1/3 of them were killed in the middle and southern areas. Of the nearly 70 UNRWA facilities impacted, the vast majority was actually not in the north. So there's no place that is safe in the Gaza Strip, let alone a safe zone anywhere in Gaza. At least 103 UNRWA colleagues were killed. This is the number that we were able to confirm. The actual number is likely to be much higher. We have lost contact with many of our staff, and we worry that some of them are still under the rubble. These were our colleagues. They had nothing to do with this conflict. They were civil servants of the United Nations, dedicated to serving their community. They are dead now. Last Monday, the UN declared half-mast to remember them around the world, except in Gaza, where our colleagues felt strongly that the best way to honor these colleagues is through our humanitarian response. Many of those colleagues were killed with their families. Dr. Sireen was a gynecologist. She was killed with her daughter. Sireen was one of very few women health specialists in the Gaza Strip. Our colleagues and all other civilians killed in Gaza, they're not statistics or updates. They are people. It could have been you. It could have been me, members of our families. We'd like to reiterate that UNRWA does not divert humanitarian assistance, nor have parties to the conflict looted or stole our supplies. We have a robust system of aid delivery, monitoring, and evaluation. And finally, on the issue of fuel, to what Abir said, let me just compliment. UNRWA is not able to uphold the commitments to provide for the Palestinian people any longer. We see this as a deliberate attempt to strangle our operations and paralyze UNRWA. For weeks on end, we have pleaded for urgent deliveries of fuel. Yesterday, we finally got a shipment of fuel that was conditional to be used only for the transport of aid trucks, only for the transport of aid trucks coming from Egypt. We could not use that fuel for any other humanitarian purposes, including for our own operations, for medical facilities or water stations. As a result, 70% of people in Gaza do not have drinking water. In Rafah, in the south of the Gaza Strip, as one example, raw sewage has started flowing in the streets. We're not able to give the little aid that has been received through these trucks that my colleague Abir referred to people who need it most, because we simply do not have the fuel to transport that aid. It is simply outrageous that humanitarian agencies are reduced to begging for fuel. I'll turn very quickly to the situation in the occupied West Bank, because we should not forget the plight of the Palestinian people in the West Bank, including in East Jerusalem. Long before October 7, the West Bank was especially violent, including in Palestine refugee camps. Only since the 7th of October, 44 Palestinian children have been killed. We have just returned from a visit to the Shurfat refugee camp, where I had the honor to accompany the UNRWA Commissioner General. The staff there, our colleagues, they told us they lived in constant uncertainty, worry, and fear amid Israeli forces' operations. And just after our visit, another operation forced UNRWA to evacuate schools in the camp, which affected 600 boys and girls. And before closing, just a few asks, and then happy to take your questions. We need a ceasefire now, if we want to save whatever is left of our humanity. In fact, it's long overdue. Fuel must be delivered without any conditions or delays for the humanitarian operations across the Gaza Strip. Anything less than our minimum needs would be cruel. Without it, 2 million people will be deprived of services and humanitarian assistance. The siege on Gaza, finally, must be lifted, and humanitarian and commercial supplies should flow in a regular and predictable basis. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll now turn the floor over for questions.